Good morning, good morning, good morning. It is a wonderful day in the neighborhood, and I'm not Mr. Rogers. I'm bringing you greetings from the Smc Church here in beautiful Huntsville, Alabama. I'm Deacon Fred Flush, your facilitator for our Sunday church school for Sunday, September the 1st, in the year of our Lord 2024. Yes, I said what I said. It's September the 1st. We're in the fourth quarter now. So man, that 2024 is on this last leg. We coming around the third and heading to the plate, and Lord has carried us every step of the way. We bring you greetings this morning, and welcome to our Sunday church school. For those that's watching via our live stream, via Facebook or YouTube, or those that's on their way to the facility, we say welcome. And we are embarking upon a new series of lessons, and it's just a wonderful thing. And we're just thankful for this opportunity. Before we get opened up, we just want to we're just thankful for everything the Lord has done and is doing, and things He's doing out of sight and out of the minds of folks, and for our good. And we just want to continue to thank Him for that. And we're certainly praying for various things. We're still praying. For my own membership, praying for our own Deacon Pitts, praying for our own Deacon Brooks, our own Mother Turner, and also praying for Brother George Nichols, also praying for the Porter family, as many others. We're also praying for Mother Hadaway. So we're certainly praying for all of those folks. Special prayers this morning go to the Johnson families. Some relatives of mine, Louisville, Kentucky, who I lost one of my close cousins on Saturday. I think it might have been last Saturday, and so we didn't have Sunday school on last Sunday. So I'm certainly praying for the Johnson family, Louisville, Kentucky. Our prayers are certainly with you as we deal with the bereavement of our departed loved one, and many others are going through various bereavement. We're certainly praying for you. That being said, let's go ahead and get into our lesson for today. The lesson, September the 1st, this month, we're in a new quarter, and the quarter is entitled section of lessons is called Worship in the Covenant Community. Worship in the Covenant Community. And this is unit 1 in that quarter, and it's entitled Leaders Set Worship Examples, which is lessons 1 through 5, of which this is lesson numero 1, number 1. All right. So our lesson is entitled Abram Builds an Altar, and it's coming to us from Genesis, in the very first book of the Bible. All right. Genesis, the 13th chapter, verses 8 through 13. Added devotional readings, Philippians 4:10 through 19, and our background scripture is Genesis 12 and 13. Our key verse today: Abram removed his tent and came and dwelt in the plain of Mamre, which is in Hebron, and built there an altar unto the Lord. Genesis 13 and 18. All right, our lesson aims. Number 1, outline the events that led to Abram's building an altar. Number 2, explain the significance of Abram's actions. And 3, come on in. Number 3, create a physical reminder of a time when God worked in his or her life. Amen. That's a take-home assignment, if you will. All right. So in our outline, let's go ahead and do our home daily Bible readings. And those are the readings that accompany this lesson. Beginning on August 26th. A new life of obedience, Genesis 12, 1 through 9. God's promise promises are always. 2 Corinthians 1:16 through 24. Tuesday, August 27th, a new life of obedience. Genesis 12:1 through 9. Wednesday, August the 28th, fear, not faith. Genesis 12:10 through 20. Thursday, August the 29th, God will fully satisfy your needs. Philippians 4:10 through 19. Thursday, August the 30th. Friday, August the 30th, walk in Christ with thanksgiving. Colossians 2:6 through 12. Saturday, August 31st, God fills us with joy. Colossians 2:6 through 12. Psalm 16, I'm sorry, distracted here. And then Sunday, September the 1st, gratefulness of God's promises. Genesis 13:8 through 18. Amen. And our introduction this morning, and it's entitled Sacred Spaces. Sacred Spaces. Okay. When our signature on the contract and an offer was accepted, the deal was done. We had sold our home. It was only a small condo on a quiet cul-de-sac, but we had been there over 10 years. While saying goodbye, we realized how the space had become more than four walls and a roof to our families. It had become our home. Sure, the place had its problems. When we arrived, my spouse and I had primed and painted over the worn trim. We had fixed the ceiling cracks in the kitchen. And in the proudest project of all, we spent a summer tiling the bathroom. That was one of those projects we would never have started had we known the time and the effort that was required. But when we stepped back and looked around the place, every corner held some special significance and had a memory to replay. We thought of our kids and who learned to crawl across that carpet. We thought of the family dance parties that woke the neighbors. We thought of our friends who shared griefs and joys around the table. If the walls could talk, they had a decade of stories to tell. It is the narrative of Genesis 13. Abram began to call a new land his home. He probably had projects on his mind and things he wanted to improve, but he took the time to thank God and claim a space as sacred, meaning set apart for God's purpose. For generations after generations, the descendants of Abram, later renamed Abraham in Genesis 17:5, would tell stories that would refer to this place. All right. In our lesson context, we get ready to get started into our discussion. Since the day Adam and Eve were expelled from Eden, the fact of humanity's sinfulness had been nothing new in any era. It was and is a persistent problem. Thus, it was left up to God to restore creation. The divine restoration plan started in Genesis through a series of covenants and promises made to a 75-year-old Abram and his wife. Their descendants, the nation of Israel, would be the instrument through which God would send the Messiah into the world to inaugurate a new creation. Jesus fulfilled God's cosmic design. Through Jesus, a person can become a child of Abraham, joining the family of God rather than physical birth. That's found in Galatians 3 and 7, also Romans 4 and 16. Abraham, known as Abram in today's lesson, is a hero of faith. He talks about him in Hebrews 11. He is described that way because he's a hero of faith, because he was not perfect or sinless, but because by faith he left his home when called to do so by God. God's covenant with Abram included promises of land, progeny, and blessing. It took centuries for all this to become a reality. The conversations between God and Abram that begins in Genesis 12 are instrumental in revealing the developments of a personal relationship between the two. All right, let's get into the lesson here. Now, understanding our lesson is starting in the 13th chapter of um, of Genesis, and let's see here. There we go. 13th chapter of Genesis, and it's verses 8 through 18. Let me kind of straighten this up here. All right, we're just going to go ahead and read. Our first outline is Abram's offer. Abram's offer. And that's verses 8 through 9. So let's read those together. And Abram said unto Lot, let there be no strife, I pray thee, between me and thee, and between the herdsman, my herdsman and thy herdsman, for we be brethren. Verse 9, it is not the whole land, before thee. Separate thyself, I pray thee, from me. If thou wilt take the left hand, then I will go to the right. If thou wilt depart to the right hand, then I will go to the left. All right. So let me back up here. And I probably should have did this after the introduction, and sort of to kind of give you some insight as to what's actually going on. The background for this lesson is Genesis 12 and 13. So if you read Genesis 12 and 13, it and so Tara. Ooh, what's wrong with that mic? The mic was fine. No? Oh, okay. All right. Is that one on? Testing. I think that one sounded better, but okay. Testing. So Terah was Abram's father. Well, the land where Terah was about, if you look in the 11th chapter of Genesis, and you talk about the rebellion of the folks that built the tower and all that sort of stuff, and you start seeing the building of what the nation was called Babel and Babylon, and so Terah, what he did, he sold idols in a shop. And so this is the environment that Abram grew up in, right? So so the Lord called him out of that. In chapter 12, first verse, it says, and it's amazing that the Lord in the grimiest and the most perverse or the most rebellious or of situations, the Lord can find that one in the midst and pull that one out of the muck and the mire and set and sanctify for that particular individual or group of individuals out of a land that so that's what Abram was dealing with. So the Lord called him in verse 1 in chapter 12. It says, Abram, get thee out of this land, out of your father's house, and into a land in which I will show thee. And then he went on to tell him, I'm going to make your name great. You're going to be a blessing to all these other nations. I'm going to bless them that bless you, curse them that curse you, and your descendants will be plentiful, and all these sorts of things. Now understand this, by this time, Abram is 75 years old. Okay. So what's interesting about that, now understand this, now 75 to me then isn't 75 now. And I know y'all say, Deke, what does that mean? 75 is 75. Yeah, 75 is 75 when you only live to be 80 or 90. But 75 when you live to be 175 is like middle age. Come on now. You get things have relativity. You have to make things relative, right? So yeah, if you live to be 175 years, and you find out in Deuteronomy and Numbers at the end of that Abram lived to be 175 years old. Not in Deuteronomy, but late in latter parts of Genesis, he's 175 years old. And so if you 75, that ain't even halfway. Halfway is like what 90, 85, 90. So he's, you know, so we have to make things relative. But he's still, not a young man. All right. So the Lord called him and pulled him out of that. And even with his, middle agedness, the Lord found something he could use him for. But the Lord don't use conventional means and methodology to do what he does. So he called him out to go to a land he's going to show him. Okay. Now, in that process, Abram took everything, and at the time, it was just him, Sarai, which was his wife, the people that he had working for him because he was a herdsman, and Lot, his nephew, who was entrusted to him because his father Nahor had died. So he didn't have any children of his own. So in essence, Lot was like his son. Okay. So when the Lord told him to get up and get out, it was understood Lot was going with him. I know that's a point of a lot of contention, but I will always say if the Lord didn't want him to take Lot, he would have told him not to take Lot. I'm going to stand on that. He was Lot's guardian. Lot was like his son. He didn't say take Sarah either, but it was understood you're gonna take your wife with you. So yeah, I will argue that one with folks. No, he took Lot because Lot he was felt responsible for Lot, right? And so we get to today's lesson. So some things have taken place. Now they had gone to Egypt. Their famine had taken. It's amazing when famines take place that Egypt always seems to be the place of refuge that folks go to get relief from famines, but they always find themselves in Egypt. All right, so Sarai, and Abram sojourned along with Lot and all of his stuff because of the famine went to Egypt. So supposedly Abram and Sarah had a plan. So now the backdrop is Sarah was supposedly, according to the Bible, like, very beautiful to look at. That's the way they characterized her. Very beautiful to look at. So much so that when he went places with her, he had to almost keep people from looking at her. If he went somewhere with her, he's like, hey, they're gonna try to get you if I go with you. So we're gonna concoct this plan so they won't, but I have a problem with his plan, and we'll talk about that. So when they get to Egypt, he's thinking to himself that, look, when we get here, I'm gonna tell them you my sister. I ain't gonna tell them you my wife, because what's gonna happen is they're gonna kill me and then take you away and do whatever they're gonna do with you. But they'll kill me to have you. But they won't kill me if they just think I'm your brother. So when they go to Egypt, he presented himself and Sarah as his sister. And of course, Pharaoh's camp and his officers see her, and apparently she was prettier than all the women in Egypt. And the Egypt was supposed to be known for having some very remarkable looking women. So supposedly Sarai looked better than them. Supposedly, now that's what the Bible says. So it was so that the Pharaoh's officials took her from Abram and took her into his camp. And so what they ended up doing with Abram is they started giving him all this stuff, giving him land, giving him cattle, giving him provisions, giving him gold, giving him silver, giving him all this sort of stuff. So in my opinion, this is my problem with Abram. Abram is sort of like, how can I say this? Pimping his wife. Because he's getting all of this stuff because, hey, my wife pretty and you like her, so I'm getting all this stuff. What that sound like? And to me, I got a problem with it because the only reason, because whatever they was going to do, they was going to do to her anyway. So the only reason you concocted this plan is because so that they wouldn't kill you in the process, but they can still do what they're going to do to her still. So I still got a problem with that because it seems like the only reason you came up with this problem, this solution, is for self-preservation. You weren't protecting her because what was going to happen to her was going to happen to her anyway. Right? So anyhow, good morning. So what ended up happening when they began to talk to her, and a funny things started happening to Pharaoh. His cattle and different things started to die, and stuff started happening in his family. People started getting sick. And so the Pharaoh came and told him, and I guess he talked to Sarah and whatever, and maybe because I know later when they went to Gerar, they did the same trick with Abimelech. He's like, dude, what did you do to me? As soon as you come into town with this, this woman, this pretty woman, I start to have all these problems. Why did you tell me she was your sister? Because if I'd told her you was my wife, she was my wife, you'd have killed me and you'd have took her. He said, well, we took her anyway. But no, I'm gonna tell you what you do. You take these things I gave you. We don't want nothing to do. Y'all go on. Y'all go on. Get on up out of here. So Abraham came into the land with stuff, left with way more stuff than he came into there with because of Sarah, they liked Sarah. They liked how Sarah looked, and they blessed him because of Sarah. But because they had evil intentions, what did the Lord say to Abram? I will bless them that bless you, and I will curse them that curse you. So the Lord knew that them people had bad intentions for Sarah. Sarai was what her real name was at this time. So they had to give them back to, it said, send them on their way. So, and their homes were restored after they left. Now, when they left, this is where our lesson picks up because they went out on the banks of Canaan, and they were at an elevation of 2,900 feet. Okay. So according to math, you could see from an elevation of that high about, to see from distance, because you do that by taking the square root of that and then you multiply that by, like 1,200 or whatever. 1.27, and you get like 66 miles or something like that. That's how far from the elevation that they were lifted up, you were able to see down and see all the land all around. So from this position, Abram and Lot, with their cattle, their herdsmen, the people that worked for them, and all of the trappings and all that stuff. I don't know if at this point Lot was married, but we know Lot had a wife, by what happened in the 17th and 16th, 17th, 18th chapter, so that's where the problems came in. So we pick it up at verse 8. And Abram said unto Lot, let there be no strife that between me and thee, between thy husband and thy husband. So what it ended up happening is, in the process of going into Egypt, they multiplied. Their flocks multiplied due to these people giving stuff to Abram, and then they're just gathering flocks of cattle and goats and different things. And so it is interesting because these are two different, lots of grown men at this point. So I look at it like, when you get a certain age, y'all listen to me, young people, y'all listen to me. The young people that might be listening. When you get a certain age, it becomes incumbent that you and your folks can't stay in the same house. What do you mean? Well, because as you grow, you start to accumulate things. You want some things for yourself. Now you grow up in the house, and then you get up age and you start earning a living. You start making your own money. Next hey, I got me a bedroom suite. I got me some furniture. I got me some electronic items. I got me some, and at some point you got more stuff than the house that you live in can. So in order for you to maximize, your independence and maximize you got to move out and spread your, you know. So basically, this is what Abram is telling the Lot. Look, man, because what had happened when they got upon this plot of land, you got two sets of folks. You got Abram and his wife and his folks, and you got Lot. And I don't know if he's married at the time, and I know he ended up with daughters. I don't know. This was some later, I guess. I'm not, but he had his herd, his people that worked for him. And so they all was in this land. So what you would have to do to get water, you'd have to go dig a well, and then you'd be trying to get water. Then these other folks were trying to get the water that you done dug the well for. No, this is for my folks. This is for my cattle. You got to dig your own well. So they was fighting over this little plot of land, like they fighting over there in the Gaza Strip now. And so there was another thing I want to bring out, and when you get my age, you start forgetting things, and things come to your mind in different stages. Abraham is sort of like a microcosm for God's people. What do you mean? Well, Abram was born in a land of idolatry, but the Lord called him out of that. So he was in something, but not of it. See, he was in idolatry. His dad worked in idolatry. His dad sold idolatrous items in that religious practice. But he called him out of that to be, you in this, but you're not of this. So I'm going to pull you out of that so I can use you for what I need you to use you. I'm going to sanctify you for myself, just like the Lord wants to sanctify all of us for himself out of this sinful world that we live in, where that they're doing the same thing in Babylon in those days that they're doing in America today. Okay? And the Lord wants to call you out of that stuff into stuff that he's going to commission for you to do. Okay? All right, so Abram and Lot had land, but there was too many people, too many herdsmen, too many cattle to occupy the land, that the crew was fighting amongst each other over the water, over the land, the grazing land. Your cattle eating up all the grass. Now our cattle ain't gonna have none. Your cattle drinking up all, and goats drinking up all the water. My camels, goats ain't gonna have any. So that's where Abram said, look, we got us a problem. So you got two adults basically staying in the same house, is the paraphrase that I'm using here. So you got to spread out. And so this is what Abram said. He said, look, there be no strife, I pray thee, between me and thee, and between my herdsmen and your herdsmen, and between your folks and my folks, because it's not just him and Lot, is Lot's camp and Lot's group, and it's Abram's camp and his people. So it says, he said, for we be brethren. We not just businessmen, we kinsmen. You my son, essentially. For most of his life, Lot didn't have no daddy. His daddy had died, right? So they close. He's like, and he loved Lot like a son. So it's like, hey, man, I love you, but we gotta do something here, because these folks is fighting, and this land, we're gonna end up killing the land. This land ain't big enough. This little plot ain't big enough for both of us. And I know you want to stay up under me, and I know you love me, and I love you, but this ain't gonna work. This ain't gonna work. Okay. Verse 9. Is not this whole land before thee? And so that's when they stood out on the and like I said, it had an elevation of like 2,900 feet. And like I said, according to the calculations, supposedly when you take that kind of height, you can find how far you can see by taking the square root of that and then multiplying that by like 1 point something. 1 point, at an elevation of 2,900 feet. Bethel, that's where they were. Bethel. Bethel is one of the highest places in the region. Okay, at 2,900 feet. It's about half a mile, a little over half a mile high. Okay. And so an elevation of 29 feet, Bethel was one of the highest places in the region. Taking the square root of that number and multiplying that result by 1.222459 yields approximately 66 miles. That's the distance in which Abram and Lot can stand up on that crest and look out over the horizon and make out land. Beyond that, you can't see it because you're looking down. So they could see in all directions, east, west, south, north, east. You can see 65, 66 miles each direction. Okay. So, and according to the calculations, if you take the what they call the square miles of that, it end up being like 100, like 100 and something, 13,000 square miles or something to that. And so what they came up with is that particular square mileage is like a third of the state of Tennessee. Okay. Good morning, Deke. All right. So from this vantage point, they could see all the land. So he told Lot, look, man, you look out amongst the land here, and you pick out the land you take, and I'll take what you don't want. Now, this is interesting because the Lord promised him the land of Canaan. So sometimes things be destined. Okay. Let me tell you what I mean by that. Now, when he told Abram, I'm going to give you this land, when they were sojourning, he said, look, where you at right now? I'm going to give you this land for your descendants. Now, when he told Lot to pick for him what land he was going to occupy, what stopped Lot from picking the land of Canaan? Because had he picked the land of Canaan, then Abram would have had to take in the land that the Lot chose to be the land he was going to dwell in. And then all the things that the Lord had put in place wouldn't have came to pass in the method in which he had planned it for. But the Lord always have a way of looking at things. And I believe sometimes the Lord make things look a certain way to erect certain thought processes from us. And so what he proposed in Lot's mind, Lot looked down and he said, ooh, look at that valley down there. And he looked down there at the Jordan. Now, let me show you the distance here. Now, where they were at Bethel was the highest of elevations, okay? He looked down at the Jordan Brook and the Jordan area with the Jordan River, which starts in one area and then rolls into what they call the Dead Sea at the mouth of it. I did the research. Y'all can go look it up. At its mouth at the Dead Sea, the Jordan is the lowest below sea level of any place in the world. So you're looking at it from the highest place in the Jordan Brook and the Jordan River down here, whatever how it rolls, is at the lowest point. So Lot is looking at that and he's seeing, oh, look at how lush and pleasant the grass looks and the water is plentiful and this sort of thing. And he looked at it from that aspect and he chose that to be his land. Now, I'm going to tell you why that wasn't a good choice, but he didn't know it. That land butted up towards Zoar and Sodom and Gomorrah. He doesn't know that at the time. He's just looking at the land from a physical perspective. He's looking at it from a standpoint, look, that's a good amount of land and grass and water where I can feed my flocks. The cattle can eat this grass. They can get water. They can flourish. He wouldn't have picked it if it was desert. He's like, no, I can't. My cattle will die here. So that's why he picked it, okay? But sometimes the lesson in this is that sometimes the things that look good to you from a physical perspective, from another perspective, is not good for you. So what that means, sometimes the things that look good to you are not good for you. That's it. Oh yeah, she might look nice and wear a dress well and all that sort of stuff. And people don't like to talk about that side of it. They'll talk about the no good dude or whatever. But I'm gonna go from the other side. Sometimes now she may look nice and she got the dress is hits everything it's supposed to hit, and she knows how to walk in the room and walk out of the room. She knows how to do all that stuff, but then she don't mean you no good. Okay. She might look good to you and it's not. Or the neighborhood you might pick, the streets look good, the homes look good, but they may have a crime problem. That's what he was finding out with this land here. See, he didn't have the benefit of what we have today. Now, you go into a city that you're perspective, I'll say it right in a minute, place that you want to live, you can go on Google and find out what the schools are like. You can find out if there's sexual predators in the neighborhood. You can find out what the per capita income is. You can find out what the unemployment rate is, the crime statistics. You can find out all of those things before you put your name on the deed. Okay? You can find out all of that stuff. So Lot didn't have all of that. He had just his eyes. Now, to be truthful, he probably should have asked Abram, what you think, Unc? Because Unc walked with the Lord. The Lord talked to him. Now, it don't say nowhere in there where Lot did anything with the Lord. He just was with Abram. But I just believe that if, you got kids growing up in your house and the kids or nephews or whatever the case been, because he's raising them, seeing him pray to the Lord, seeing him building altars, seeing him go before the Lord, seeing him live a certain way, some of it got to rub off on him, right? Right? I don't know. That's something it's always something we have to discuss, but we don't know for sure. But all we know is Lot looked at what the land looked like, and he made his decision. I'm gonna pick that land down there because it's got good land, it's got good grass, it's got good level ground, there's plenty of water. My cattle can live well. I can see us surviving here. And he picked that land. So Abram was left with what was left over. Oh, well, that just leaves me this land up here on this mountain here, up here in Canaan. And that ended up being the land that he ended up being at, okay? So he told him, he said, look, if you pick the land on the left, I'll take the land on the right. If you take the land on the right, I'll take the land on the left. Whatever you don't choose, I'll pick the other. So somehow the Lord worked it up in Lot's mind to take the land down there on the Jordan Brook, which left the land that the Lord had promised Abram to start with to be his land. Amazing how things work out, huh? It's amazing. All right, now let's look at our next outline. We're talking about Abram's offer. He offered because he wanted them to not fight, okay? The herdsman was fighting. So, look, let's find a truce here. You take the land on the left, I take the land on the right. You take the land on the right, I take the land on the left. He took the land down the hill. I'm going to take the land up here on the mountain. All right? Now, that's Abram's offer. Let's look at our second outline here, okay? Because it always become a problem when you got a fixed set of resources and you got people fighting over a piece of land. Like I said, they fighting over that Gaza Strip right now. All of that fighting is going on, and with Hamas and Israel and the Palestine, that's all the same thing. They all fighting over a piece of land. Okay? They still are. Okay? Now, here's our second outline, Lot's choice. Verse 10, and we're going to read 10 through 13. And Lot lifted up his eyes, and behold, all the plain of Jordan. So that means I kind of got ahead of myself. All the plain of Jordan, that it was well watered everywhere before the Lord. This is before the Lord had destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah. See, like I said, he did not know what Sodom and Gomorrah represented, okay? But we do. because it's written in our, in our Bibles. They're just out surveying land. They don't know what kind of folks them are down the road. They don't know. They ain't got no police reports. They don't know that. So, but on the outside, because the Lord ended up destroying that land and all that there with fire and brimstone, right? All that land would be destroyed, some years later. Okay. But it looked appealing. Don't you know sometimes the devil make some stuff look pretty and it really be to your detriment? If you're a diabetic, he'll make that chocolate cake look so good and delectable. It's moist looking. You just want to take the whole cake. You'll be in the hospital the next week. That cake looking good. Okay? Somehow this land looks so good that it made Lot make this choice. Okay, let's move on. But this was before the Lord destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah, even as the garden of the Lord, like the land of Egypt. Okay, as thou cometh into Zoar, like I said, Zoar. Now remember in our sermon series where our pastor was talking about when Lot was in the cave with his two daughters. That's in Zoar. Okay, that was where that's. Remember when he fled the city, they went outside of where the destruction was, and they found a cave, and that's where they were. This is where this is where he lived, in this area right outside of Sodom and Gomorrah. Then eventually he moved into the city. Okay. Okay, let's move on. Verse 11. Then Lot chose him all the plain of Jordan, and Lot journeyed east. Now, in biblical terms, we think of east as being good because we say, a lot of people in the east, when they pray, they turn toward the east and pray. I don't know if y'all knew that or not. They do that, all right? But if you look in Genesis, when Adam and Eve were banished out of the garden, it says the angels came and banished them out and sent them eastward. Okay, when the people who were building the tower in Babel in chapter 11 went and journeyed and found, Shinar and all that stuff where they built the tower, those are rebellious people. They went eastward. So going east seemed to be like where you would go to sort of get away from God, so to speak. So the Lot chose him all the plain of Jordan, and Lot journeyed east, and thus separated themselves one from another, meaning he and Abram. So it says here, as Lot stood next to his uncle, he undoubtedly thought he had the better deal regarding the choices of the two lands. He looked at this one, it's prettier. It's got water. It's got access to water. I ain't got to dig no whole bunch of wells. The Jordan River's right there. It's easier to work. And, he looking at it and look good, right? But in the events of Genesis 18 and 19, that's when we find out what kind of people lived in the neighboring town. We found out how poor his choice was. Lot's selected territory means that he will be moving east. Given the reference point of Genesis 13 and 3, in the Genesis narrative, traveling to the east has been associated with moves away from God. First, Adam and Eve were driven eastward from the garden in Genesis 3:24. Y'all can look that up if y'all like. Next, Cain moved east into the land of Nod after he killed his brother Abel. Okay, he went east. And finally, the builders of the city of Babel are reported to move in eastward to Shinar in Genesis 11 and 2, just like we were just talking about. Okay, verse 12. Abraham dwelled in the land of Canaan, which is the land that the Lord had promised him from the beginning. Okay? It's sort of like people doing things to come into play what the Lord had already put in wheels in motion for. Sort of like Jacob tricking Esau out of his birthright to get what was supposed to have been his already. But he did trickery to get what he was already going to get. Some other words, the Lord put it in Jacob's mind to be uh, nefarious, if you will, to do that to his own brother in order to get what he would have already was going to get anyway. Because if he'd have left it alone, then Esau would have got the birthright. Esau would have got all the stuff. Esau would have got everything. It had been left alone, but somehow it moved on the brain of Jacob to trick him out of it. Okay? So it moved on the mind of Lot to choose the land that wasn't Canaan, because the Lord had already promised the land of Canaan to Abram, right? Even though Abraham said, hey, if you pick Canaan, I'm gonna let you have that, right? But even though the Lord said, no, this is already destined to be your land. So I'm gonna make Lot pick the other land. Amen. You know the Lord can make us think what he wants us to think to put his plan in place. Y'all know that, right? The Lord can make us think what he wants us to think in order for his plan to be what he wanted to be. Y'all looking at me like y'all don't believe that. The Lord can make you think, like he can make you think that chair right there ain't there, and you'll stand up and not sit down because he wants you to stand. Even though the chair's sitting there, but he'll make it where you don't see it. Right? He can do that. Okay. Don't you remember when they were in the people were walking with Jesus after he had been crucified? The people was walking with him, didn't know they was him. People, Bible scholars, why did they didn't know that they was walking with Jesus? What the Lord do to them folks' eyes? He beholded their eyes that they weren't able to comprehend who he was. It's just like me walking with Malcolm, don't know it's Malcolm. I'm thinking I'm talking to a stranger because he's making it where he's not recognizable to me. When I see him, I see somebody with an afro instead of looking how he look. So I'm talking to him like he's somebody else. The Lord can do that. That's the point I'm making. He made Lot choose that land because he made Lot see something that it really wasn't, so that Abram could get what was promised. All right, let's move on. All right, so let's go down to 13. The environment, his environment. But the men of Sodom were wicked and sinners before the Lord exceedingly. In selecting where to live, Lot had apparently not considered the moral climate, only the availability of water. Specific information regarding the nature and the depravity of the men of Sodom is found in Genesis 19. And then you can also find some of that in Ezekiel 16. It talks about that, some of the things that they were. He said, and the Lord is talking to Ezekiel and saying, yeah, that's why I had to go and remove them off the set, because they were doing some depraved things. Okay. All right. But now in the lesson, and this is why I want people to think for themselves. When I read these lessons, I don't always take the positions that the people who write the book always, because I think I can think for myself. I can see a thing and tell you like, hey, you know what, that don't, well, yeah, he probably shouldn't have picked that because he's looking. Yeah, but what else was he gonna look for? I mean, the land wasn't gonna tell him that there were drag queens down there, right? He can't tell that from 66 miles away, right? So I don't hold him as responsible as the lesson does, because they made him look like, oh, he just picked the bad because it looked good. Yeah, he a farmer? What's he supposed to look for? You're supposed to look for how nice the land look and how well it's going to provide for you. That's what you're supposed to look for, right? You know, that's I'm like, I'm not gonna buy that one. You got to sell that one to somebody that don't think for themselves. Okay, but it ended up being that because Lot probably wasn't as spiritually bound as Abram, because Abram would have talked to the Lord before he picked the land. Because the Lord would have told him, although that looked good, you don't want to be there. So when you don't have a connection with the Lord, sometimes you can make decisions on things. And so I will give him a little bit of pushback for that. because you've been with Abram all this time. Some more of that should have rubbed off on you. Some of that good stuff that's on him should have rubbed off on you. You got some of this extra stuff. You know, sometimes you put lotion on. I know y'all put lotion on, and sometimes it be too much. Here, give me your hand. Let me put some on you. Some of that should have went on to Lot when you see him bathing in the Lord's stuff. Here, let me give you some of this excess. Let me rub some of this on you. But some of it didn't go because he didn't consult his uncle and he didn't consult God in terms of, should I pick this? He went on, just like I said, if you pick her just because she wear a dress nice, you could get messed up. Or let me tell it the other way, if you picked him because that suit looked good on him, you could get turned the wrong way. You better look at some other things. Amen? Okay. I had to turn it the other way now. I can't just go that way with, because I get run out. I get run out of here. 14 and 15, I've been told to wrap it up. God's promises, 14 and 15. And the Lord said unto Abram, after Lot was separated from him, lift up thine eyes and look from the places where thou art northward, eastward, southward, and westward. For the land which thou seest, to thee I will give it to thee for thy seed forever. This is what he promised him in Genesis 12. I'm going to give you all this land. Even though Lot thought he was picking on his own, he really wasn't picking. I made him pick that so you could get the land I had already promised you. All right? Thus, when God invites Abram to look northward, southward, eastward, and westward, the man can see as far as 66 miles in any direction, like we said earlier. If we imagine Abram standing in the middle of a circle with visibility radius of 66 miles, the result of Abraham's potential being able to see about 13,700 square miles, a mile this way, that way, this way, and that way, is a square mile, but it's really 4 miles because it's a mile each direction, but it's 1 square mile, okay? 13,000, which I said is about 1/3 the state of Tennessee. That's how flat the land was and how high he was. I mean, not how flat, but how high he was standing. You could see further. You could see further down when you're at high elevation. Okay. 16, and I will make thy seed as the dust of the earth, so that if a man can count the dust of the earth, so shall thy seed be. What the Lord is doing here, he is reinforcing the promise he's already made him. So I know you done been through some things. You done went through Egypt. You did some things you shouldn't have done. I told you he basically had pimped Sarah out. He got stuff because they thought Sarah was good looking, so they gave him stuff because of her. So basically, she pretty, so you're gonna give me gold, you're gonna give me silver, you're gonna give me cattle because she pretty. What does that sound like? Read that. It's in there. Read it. It's in there. That's why he told her she was his sister. Okay. But actually he didn't lie, because Sarah was his dad's wife, his dad's daughter, but not his mama's daughter. Terah had more than one, he had children by more than one woman. Okay. Verse 17, 18, we closing. I've been told to wrap it up. And here we go. I'm fixing to find it here. Here we go. 17 says, arise, walk through the land, the length of it, the breadth of it, and I will give it unto thee. Just as like when you go buy the car, don't that guy tell you to go sit in the car? That's like you laying claim to it because you sit in it long enough, smell it long enough. He let him go, you go walk the land. Go and walk through, walk the meadows. Watch how that grass feel under your feet. You can take ownership of it. So when you go to Landers, McCarty, or wherever go, or Mercedes Benz, wherever, and they tell you to sit in that, yeah, go on, sit in it. I'll go and do some paperwork. You go on and sit in it. I'll go on upstairs. Yeah, they want you to do so. You can start smelling it. You start moving the switches and turning the steering wheel. And shoot, they might let you crank it up. Yeah, they don't take it for a spin. We'll get a guy to go, don't take it for a spin. I'm going in here. Go on, do what you got. Yeah, they setting you up. That's what they did. Yeah, go and walk this land. Let you see what you got. Verse 18 in our last verse, and we're closing. We're going to dismiss right after this. And he said here in our last verse, as soon as I find it, I always lose it in the margins here because it's hidden in the margins, and my eyes don't always pick it up. where it sit. It don't set apart the verses like they should be set apart. Yeah. Then Abram removed his tent and came and dwelt in the plain of Mamre, which is in Hebron, and built an altar there unto the Lord. He built an altar to the Lord. What does that mean? That means he's worshiping the Lord. He's thanking the Lord for taking him through all these various things. Them Egyptians could have killed him for what he did to them, lying to them. And see, I didn't tell you this. When he did that, them folks, families and stuff started being sick and stuff started dying, because they was fixing to do some stuff to Sarah because they took him from her. Oh, that's your brother? Yeah, come on here. You come on with these other women. Yeah, they's fixing to do some things to her. Okay. But people start dying, crops start dying, animals start dying, people start getting sick. And he called Abram and said, "What you done to me, man? You come in here and all of a sudden stuff start going crazy. Why you tell me that was your sister? Why you tell me that was your sister? That's your wife." Because if I told you my wife, you'd have killed me. They said, "Well, we're gonna kill you anyway, because you didn't, now we getting cursed." But the Lord told him, "I'm gonna bless them that what? Bless you, and I'm gonna what? That right. All right." So Abraham built an altar. I'm hoping y'all got a blessing from the lesson and got something that will propel you and motivate you for the rest of the week. If you will, stand with me so we can be dismissed. And I'm a minute late. Repeat after me. Let the words of my mouth, meditation of my heart, be acceptable in thy sight. O Lord, my strength and my redeemer. Consider yourselves dismissed.